Welcome to episode 97 of Our Modern Heritage, the Home and Family Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Jody Chafee, and I'm so excited to have with me today Lori Lynn. Lori is known for her royal excitedness, and Lori believes that the best way to elevate your vibration, change your mindset, and get on the path to success is to find other people who have faced similar challenges, hear their stories, and believe that the same can happen for you. And Lori is the hostess of the Rise and Climb podcast, and she's also a homeschool mom. And she's been homeschooling since the beginning, and so I'm really excited to have Lori on the show today. Welcome, Lori.
Hey, thanks, Jody, for having me. I appreciate it.
So tell me more about, you said you've been homeschooling from the beginning, right? And so, what made you decide that you wanted to do that?
Well, it's interesting. I never wanted to be a mom, first of all. I was scared to death of becoming a mom. And then once I crossed that hurdle, actually, it was because of teaching at a homeschool tutorial that my heart even opened up to the possibility of becoming a mom.
Wow.
So I started out in Nashville about 20 years ago. Someone recruited me to come teach at, it was called New Song Christian Academy. And I was teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students language arts. And when people would ask me, so what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a language arts teacher for junior high kids. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like
cringe.
You don't know my kids. I absolutely fell in love with those kids. I had them 2 days a week. They were homeschooled the rest of the time. And they opened up for me the possibility of having kids that I would really enjoy being around. And I thought, if I could have kids like this, I would want to have kids. And so when I found out that I was pregnant in Uganda, in East Africa, like you do,
Wow.
I was teaching there at a boarding school for orphans and discovered that I was pregnant, took 3 pregnancy tests because I was like, no, this can't be. Sure enough, practice child number 1 comes along.
Right. Right.
We came back to the States and I was still in touch with a lot of the families whose children I taught, and every single one of them, oh my gosh, Jody, I forgot about this. They hosted a baby shower for me and all of the kids brought their favorite books. I had a book baby shower with my homeschool kids.
That's awesome.
So great. And every single one of them said, you're going to homeschool, right? Like you don't have another option. Like there are no alternatives. You must homeschool. So yeah, that's how we got started.
That's awesome. I'm totally in that category too. Like what other option is there? We're a homeschool family. Like that's how it is. So no other option. I mean, I just always had this belief that, that it's like, I just want to be able to have the freedom to educate my kids. But mostly it kind of turned into more of, I wanted them to have the freedom. It hasn't even really been about me at all. I'm just like, I really just want them to have the freedom to be able to learn what they want to learn. Yeah. So have you seen that with your experience of raising your kids?
Oh, sure.
Having that freedom?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the things that they've gravitated towards because I know that they are actors. Yeah,
they are. So all 3 of them actually are actors, which I didn't think would happen, but I have always loved theater. And it's funny, when I was co-teaching at New Song, my co-teacher was really interested in Shakespeare. And I didn't grow up with Shakespeare. And so it seemed really daunting and really intimidating. But here in Nashville, we have Nashville Shakespeare Company, and they do free plays in the summertime. And they place these 500-year-old stories in modern day situations. They use all of the archaic language, but they use all of the body language to help convey the meaning. So my kids actually grew up watching these plays, and my middle daughter loves Shakespeare. Actually, my son loves Shakespeare, loves Shakespeare. And my middle daughter loves it so much that she actually did a Shakespeare workshop with the Theater Bug just recently, and had her lines memorized straight away, knew exactly what she was saying. And then one of the friends of mine who's also a homeschool mom came to see her, and she's like, so how come nobody does Juliet like with all that sass? Because that was awesome.
Nice. Like, I think that's how Juliet really would have been.
Yeah.
No, that's cute. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's like, it's not like I started homeschooling to try to make them fall in love with something that I was in love with. It just gives them the opportunity to kind of figure out like what it is they love. And then I just come alongside them and go, all right, well, let's go to this play and let's have you audition for this. And sure, we'll listen to Shakespeare in the car, like whatever.
Right? Never would have done that as a teenager or a kid, right? Like,
no. I mean, seriously, Jody, so my son is 15 and my daughter's 13. I wasn't
right?
interested in Shakespeare.
And it's not even like, I'm not like, for our family, I don't feel like I'm trying to like necessarily shelter them from like the crazy things that kids do or anything like that. But it's like, just because of the nature that we're home, we're together, and we are able to like cultivate these values that we have and things like that, and nurture the things that they get excited about or interested in. I mean, my kids are still pretty little, but it's like, that's why I just want them to naturally gravitate towards things that are productive and healthy, and and not be as concerned with whether or not they're going to please some peers or something like that because their peers are into certain things or whatever. So
Yes.
I love that so much. And so one of the things that you talked about that you wanted to bring up in this conversation, I'm excited, is that, how does this all play into this idea that you say you like to be in this, place where you're a present parent, where you are conscientious of what your children's needs are, and like wanting to be in a place where they feel seen and heard, so what does that look like for you?
Well, going back to the theater example. So the environment that Corey Lamel, who's the director at the Theater Bug, the environment that she's created is one of being present and showing love to each other. They have Love Circle at the end. And I watch her with all of these kids. So, she'll have 38 kids in a room, but every single one of them feels like they're the most important kid in the world. And so when I watch her interact with them, she stops, she makes eye contact. She like puts her arm around one while she's talking to another. She gives a high five. There's all this like physical touch and eye contact and listening and responding back to what they say. And I thought, it's so beautiful, this little microcosm that she's created with these kids. And I started really paying attention to what it is that I do that sort of models that, and what I do unintentionally, like just without even thinking about it. And so the other day I was on the phone, and I don't like to be on the phone when my kids wake up or when they go to bed. I feel like they're kind of golden hours, and they're just in a really vulnerable place, as they're rising and as they're going to sleep. They're a little bit more willing to share their feelings. It's just a tender time. But I was on the phone when my youngest was waking up, and she goes, "Mom!" So I go in the room and I let her know that I'm on the phone, but I stand there and I just start massaging her legs through the blanket. And I thought later, if she had been missing one of her senses, if she didn't have the sense of being able to hear, if she were deaf, then that would have been a way that I would have communicated with her anyway. Like your presence and your physical touch and just massaging her legs, just knowing like, I'm here, I'm present, I love you. I need a minute, to finish up what I'm doing, but I'm still engaging. I'm still being present. I'm still letting her know, like, I'm here and I love you and you have my attention, even though my attention is divided at the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense. Because you're communicating to them that with these different aspects of like, I don't have to necessarily talk to you or things like that. But I can be, like you said, the teacher will put her arm around somebody, and like I saw this one thing one time that was like, if you're on the phone or you're talking to somebody, your child starts coming and tries to interrupt, you just kind of hold their hand or something, just until you're like, okay, I know you're there. I see you and I know you're there. Just give me 1 second to finish up. And it just gives them that reassurance that it's like, I do care and I'm not trying to ignore you or blow you off, because how, there's kids are so sensitive to those things, right? Like they want mom's attention. They want to know that you care. And so I love that approach that that you're putting them first. And I feel like that's like because you mentioned before we started recording, like how even in every aspect of your life, like you're building a business that works around your family, not the other way around.
Right.
And how important your family is for you to make sure that they are the priority. That's awesome. So what are some other ways that you, I love this idea of like, of being present, so what are some other ways that you show or demonstrate this presence so that you can, feed off of their messaging, right? Like if they're communicating, kids sometimes they don't know how to like use their words when they want to communicate something, so like when you're doing, how did you know anyway? Yeah. How what else do you do? I'm just trying to have a conversation, what else do you like to do to like let them know or respond to them? What are your like habits for like engaged listening or things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what makes me laugh is the other night, they know that it's really hard to pin me down. It's hard to make me just sit. Like I'm like, even on our interview, I'm standing. I just don't like to sit. And if I sit for very long, I tend to fall asleep. So the other night they had talked me into watching a movie. And I don't typically watch movies. I could probably count on one hand the number of movies that I've seen in the last year. But they had determined that they were going to pin me down and they were going to make me like sit between them. And they're like, and you have to hold, we don't own a television. We have laptops that we watch movies on. Nice. So they're like, you have to hold the laptop and we're going to sit on either side of you and make sure you don't get up and go anywhere. And every now and then, I think it's important to like let them feel like, okay, I'm the one in control here. We're pinning mom down and we're making her sit with us. And so we ended up watching the movie from beginning to end. I didn't fall asleep. It was amazing.
Fantastic. That's awesome.
But the rest of the time, I'm juggling. I'm not like focusing on one thing for 2 hours. I'm on the phone and I'm like, filing something away, or I'm putting out a fire and I'm trying to, answer a math question while answering a, a Latin question or whatever. And so I have to often explain ahead of time, like there's one of me. And before my son went to Nashville School of the Arts, he's in 10th grade in high school right now. And he's full-time doing that. I'm not doing his homeschooling this year.
Okay.
But up to this year, that's all we did. And so I just have to explain ahead of time, like I'm juggling all of this work stuff so that I don't have to leave early in the morning and come back late in the afternoon and give you the frazzled part of me as we're trying to like get something to eat, make sure you did all your homework, and then go to bed and start over the next day. Like if you like that I'm available throughout the day, if you like that I can run you to auditions and rehearsals and gigs and hanging out with friends, and like if you like going to roller derby, if you like going roller skating, if those are things that you enjoy and you want mom to be able to take you to those things, you got to give me some space, to be able to like edit something real fast and then turn to your questions. So they have to have extremely high level of patience with me as I'm, trying to be patient with them. But then we'll make deals. We'll say, as soon as you're done with this, will you give me your undivided attention and work with me until I'm finished with math? And so one of my probably core values around homeschooling is that 15 minutes of full attention is vastly more valuable than 45 minutes of inattention. So we'll sometimes just set timers and go, all right, you've got me for 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is that we need to knock something out. And they know, like they have that comfort of knowing like mom's not going to be distracted or disappear.
Yeah.
And I'll give them, that 10 or 15 minutes. And the other thing that I do is we don't take school home, like we don't do the traditional idea of what school looks like at home.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll snuggle up on the couch together and work through math problems.
Right.
My youngest likes to sing her language arts. So
Okay.
I let her.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Sing her math problems. She likes to draw it out. She loves to just get up and act everything out. And that girl needs an audience. She's number 3, so she needs an audience. And so I'm willing to be her audience. And I have to remember that. My middle daughter needs order and peace. She needs structure, which is why she's doing a tutorial program this year. She wanted someone to say, this is what we're doing this week, and this is when it needs to be done. And she knew what to expect. And so she actually paid for a third of that tuition, got her dad to pay a third and me to pay a third because she wanted to do that badly.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So like you guys were really supportive and empowered her to do that she was committed to do it. Like, okay, let's do this together and work together. I like that you described that this is like a two-way street. Like you're communicating your needs and they are communicating their needs. And it's like, yeah, we have to all come together to not compromise, but like it's like, it's a balance. It's like, you want to make sure that everybody's needs are met. And so I like the way you describe that. Like you sit them down, say, okay, these are my needs. And then you can tell me about your needs. And so that's really awesome. And go ahead.
I was going to say too, when I'm on the phone, which I do a lot of my business over the phone, I can be very distracted when they're trying to talk to me. So I have to draw a clear line between like, if I'm looking at my phone and my thumbs are going like this, I'm actually having a conversation with someone. So I need you to imagine that someone is right there and you're interrupting. So when I'm done and I know you're there and you have your arm on my hand on my arm, or I know that you need my attention. The moment that I'm done, I will set that down. I will turn away completely and I will give you my undivided attention. But it's that two-way street. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not going to jump in on a conversation with you and your friends. And I expect you not to jump in on a conversation with me and someone that I'm working with. But I have to, have these conversations while I'm trying to do all these other things. And sometimes I'll carve out, specific time just to work on school with the kids. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there are times when we've got a deadline or something and we've got to have that give and take. And so I think it's important when we're, I say distracted, but when we're focused on something that we need to complete, instead of trying to divide our attention, just letting them know, as soon as this is done, I will shut it down completely and I will give you my attention, instead of trying to be like, oh yeah, no, I hear you, that, but, and just kind of,
and then not actually,
nodding, but you don't really hear them,
Yeah.
And so
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
If I'm doing something, I'm like, oh, I actually didn't hear anything you just said. Sorry. Yeah. Like that's what I end up doing. I'm like, okay, I was doing something over here and I didn't actually hear what you said. So let's go back and do it over again. I like that you're able to just be clear and be like, no, actually, I can't pay attention to you at this moment, but when I can, I will put this aside and give you my attention. Yeah. Ultimately, that's just all that is you're just demonstrating social intelligence. Right? Like that's all that really is. It's like you are just demonstrating how to interact with people in a healthy way that allows you to prioritize your time and your, attention, and still showing people that they matter and you care. So it's like, that's really, social intelligence is so important. I can't emphasize that enough. And, I actually had a really great conversation with somebody about this fact of how emotional intelligence, social intelligence, these are things that kids are struggling with these days, because it's like a lot of us are still struggling with it ourselves, as adults, as parents, and things like that. And there aren't a lot of people modeling for their kids or for youth what social intelligence looks like being able to make eye contact with people, being able to, you know, carry conversations with anybody. It's so important.
Yeah. And something that I thought of when you said making sure that they feel like they're important, and then you talked about eye contact again. One of the things that I try to be very, very mindful about is the moment that I see them for the first time in the morning, I make eye contact and I smile.
Mm-hmm.
First
Mm-hmm.
thing. So their first interaction of the whole day with me is I see you and I'm smiling at you and you feel like I love you. I love
Mm-hmm.
you and I want you here, you know?
Yeah.
And then when you kind of flip the idea of, you know, being on the phone but not being present, and just the feelings that they might feel of like, oh, you know, she's always on the phone, she never has time for me, I don't really matter, you know, those, all of those things get assuaged when we stand there while they're there in their presence and put our hands on them to let them know you are important to me. We may not be saying it, but we're
Yeah.
showing it. And nonverbal communication is like over 80% of how we communicate. So,
Yeah.
you know, when you ask for strategies for, you know, how do you remain present and how do you let them know that they're really important to you? I think that that is one of those things that can go unnoticed, but is like critical. This must be one of my kids because they know that they have to call me twice to get through do not disturb. That's
That's awesome.
um, that is so interesting. I may have to, if she tries to call me one more time, I may have to take it.
Okay.
It's one of my kids, but yeah, it can go unnoticed. It's one of those simple gestures that if you don't do it, you notice the ramifications of not doing it.
Right.
If
Right.
you do it, you don't necessarily know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have
Here,
to
let me
pause
pause it.
for my kid. And I think that got communicated before the phone rang. Pretty sure.
Yeah. Okay, we're good. We're good. So awesome. So I love that whole idea of you, you know, seeing them first thing in the morning and making eye contact and a smile. You know, have you done any like research into like love languages or things like that to like,
Yeah, a little
you
bit.
know, yeah. So is that helps, right? To be able to know like they respond to touch or this child responds to, you know, words of affirmation or, you know, those kinds of things. So
Yeah,
that's awesome.
absolutely.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely super helpful to be able to, I mean, just knowing your kids, right? Do you ever look into like, do you look at them go, oh, their personality type? I mean, we did just mention a little bit like introvert versus extrovert when we had the recording pause, and it was like, oh, yeah, it's good to know
Mhm.
those kinds of things. Do you feel like that helps you to
Oh
figure
yeah,
out like
yeah.
how
So
to do that?
there's a game. Have you ever heard of Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage?
No.
It's pretty funny, oddly enough. But
Cool.
they have a resource for kids that can help kids. Sorry, laugh your way to. I don't know what happened to my like ability to speak. Okay,
It's all good.
the person who founded Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage has a resource for kids that help kids. The resource helps. Sorry, the editor in me is like, you have to make that subject verb agreement, and I can't just let it go.
Just be casual. It's all
They're so
good.
kids. Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's called the flag page game. And they have these little cards. And on the cards, you have to decide if this is sometimes you, always you, or never you.
Oh yeah.
And each of those cards corresponds to a different country. So you figure out like which country you're from, whether it's control country, perfect country, peace country, or fun country. And
Wow.
so they end up learning that not everyone is just like them.
Yeah.
And you find out what you're motivated by. And you find out too, like how, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. But you find out how to motivate other people to get them on board with you. So what I noticed years ago, back when I think my oldest was 5 and my youngest was 3, and maybe a little bit younger than that, you know, maybe closer. to, there's almost exactly a 3-year gap between them. My son wanted to go downstairs and play. And my daughter, the smaller one, she just wasn't having it. She just wanted to like sit and snuggle and,
Oh,
like it's morning. We just want to like have some snuggle time. And he could not get her to budge, could not get her, like was talking about how much fun it would be to go downstairs and they could play and they could do this, they could do that. And he was ready for adventure. And, she just wasn't budging. And then he started to fall off the bed and he's like, Miriam, help. And instantly, like she bolted over there and she's like ready to pull him up off the bed or make sure he's okay. And I was like, motivated by helping people much?
Yeah, right. Wow. Interesting.
Isn't it? And then my youngest is motivated by fun. So we can get her to do anything if we make it fun. She's the one who sings her math problems.
Nice.
So it's torture for her to just sit down and do it and just get it done. It's torture for my middle child to drag it out. So understanding that the youngest one needs the time to get it, make it creative and make it fun. And then the middle child who she's motivated by helping people. But when she does the flag page, she comes out really high on perfect country. She wants to know what's expected of her. She has 3 calendars in her room.
Wow. Like 3 that are last month and next month?
She just likes to have them on every wall.
Okay.
It just makes her feel better. There's
awesome.
order and peace and structure in the world.
I love that you know that about them though. Like that's so cool that that this is the way that they are. And to have such a cool resource to be like, let's make it fun. Let's find out about these things about them in a fun way. And that's so cool.
My oldest is control country. So he likes to be in charge. And it's typical, birth order stuff where the firstborn tends to be the one who can run a corporation and just leads without even realizing that they're leading because they naturally, growing up, had these other people following them. They were the one who had to come up with the idea for what we're going to do today and how we're going to play and what the rules are. And then the middle one tends to be the mediator and can, see both sides and can come up with like systems in order for both parties to get along, everyone to have peace.
Yep.
And then the youngest is the entertainer. So we've got fun country who's like, ooh, I was born into an audience.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. That's so awesome. I love that. I love learning about these different types of things, or when we watched the Inside Out movie together as a family. I don't know if you watched that one because you said you don't watch all the movies, but but I love that one because it's so important to like all of us. Again, going back to this emotional intelligence, social intelligence stuff, it's like all of that feeds into being able to say, how is this affecting you right now, and how is that impacting me, and things like that, and being able to just recognize and like put a label to what's happening without necessarily assigning judgment to it either, because I'm definitely a big fan of like the philosophy of like non-judgment, right? That we're not here to judge our children. We just help them to label things and define things and get them pointed in healthy direction, right? And so, I love that whole aspect of it, like being able to say, let's recognize this together, or that's interesting because what that comes into play a lot with acting, right? Have you noticed, like, if as kids who are actors, does their acting help them to develop that like emotional intelligence or that social intelligence? How have you noticed that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as an actor, you have to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and not judge that person. Yeah. So if you're playing the villain, you have to fully put yourself in that person's shoes without judgment.
Right.
If you're playing, so for instance, right now, on the way home last night from her rehearsal, my middle daughter is playing the best friend of a boy who has Down syndrome. And in the play, he has no speech. So originally it was written just with the idea of this child has some sort of special need, and special needs, and he doesn't have speech. But you can hear the character's thoughts over the
Oh,
intercom or the
interesting.
microphone over, so the audience can hear the thoughts, but the best friend that she's playing only has, his nonverbal communication to go by. And she just considers him all the time, like he's just part of their friend group, and he's top of mind for her because that's where she goes to find peace. Her parents are fighting, and he is this quiet space for her to just be, and she loves him. And so she wants to incorporate him into everything all the other friends are doing, and it doesn't always work the way they're hoping that it will work. And she was saying on the way home that she and the girl who's playing the older, like teenage version of her character, so it goes through from childhood, and then we see everyone grows up except for this kid, because emotionally and mentally he's still a kid, and the rest of them are growing up and getting boyfriends and thinking about having their own families, and he's sort of stuck. And so she was talking to the older version of her character about who this character is and what she's going through. They had to decide, are the parents still married and they're fighting all the time? Are they separated? What's going on with her internally that makes her want to go and hang out with, the kid's name is Oddly. It's called Oddly Puddle, is from Inner Space. So his world is all internal, it's all in his head, and his name is Oddly. And they talk about how they interact with him and how much that relationship has grown just through nonverbal communication, and how that affects them and how that affects their relationships with other people, their relationship with their best girlfriend, and how she's like all over the place and emotional and big and hilarious. And they're talking about how you don't want to gossip, and she's like, that's the lifeblood of like junior high. They're complete opposites, and they're so cute. But because she's had to delve into kind of this character study of this girl that she's portraying, she is then able to take everything that she learns from kind of stepping into the shoes of this character and apply it to anyone that she meets who might be like that. And then she gets to see other kids kind of do the same thing, and you get to kind of rub up against different personalities. It's sort of like reading books, but you just act it out. So you get to experience what it's like to interact with other personalities in your imagination when you're reading, and how you would interact with them when you're reading. But when you're forced to kind of put on that character, it takes on a whole new level, and you have to really begin to like understand what it is they're going through, what they're thinking, what their motivations are, and have compassion and empathy for yourself, for the character, and for the people that you're acting with on stage. So yes,
so
absolutely,
amazing.
100%.
Yeah. So do they bring that home with them then often? Like, do they ever, say, that because of things that they're practicing and that they're able to treat each other and their parents that way, how have you seen that play out at home?
Yeah, I think that they have a much higher level of empathy. And I think too, some of it is genetic. I mean, I don't think that everyone naturally has a lot of empathy. So my middle daughter naturally has a lot of empathy. My oldest son is very much a what's in it for me, but he can pause that and he can put himself in someone else's shoes, but it just doesn't come naturally for him. And so I think acting has really helped him, to begin to understand, like, just because this is what's going on in your world doesn't mean that that's what's going on in this world over here.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's given us the ability to be a little bit more patient with each other, and understand where the other is coming from. Do we have like massive, fights and tears and irritations and
Wait, you're still a normal family? What? Nice. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
want to sing Hamilton. I want to sing, whatever. I'm trying to think of all
Maybe
the
a little bit different arguments than some of us.
right.
We're not fighting over Hamilton. That's funny. Oh, now you are on a higher plane. That's okay. That's all right.
Oh no, it's not higher, girl. It is not higher. It's just weird.
That's awesome. Oh, Lori, it has been such a delight to have you, and I'm so grateful to have been able to talk to you. And thank you so much for being here. Where can we find you? Where can we connect with you and get to know more about you?
Sure. I'm on Facebook. I'm there almost every day somewhere. So it's actually Her Royal Excitedness.
Nice.
So you go to facebook.com/Her Royal Excitedness. You can also find me. I barely am on Instagram. Like, don't judge me by my Instagram. Please.
I want to do
It's so bad. I'm mostly there because my kids are like, Mom, you should have an Instagram. Okay, whatever.
It's a cool thing to do. All the cool kids are doing
Yeah, exactly. But there, and I think on LinkedIn and on Facebook, my business page is Lori Lynn Podcast. But yeah, like you,
Cool.
you and I both started our podcasts around the same time. And if you really want to get more of this kind of stuff, where we have interviews and we have a lot of fun, then it's the Rise and Climb podcast with Lori Lynn. So that's where I would point you, if you like what you heard, you can get more of that on the Rise and Climb podcast.
Awesome. The Rise and Climb podcast. Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Lori. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being so awesome. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. I'll see you.